A billionaire diagnosed with a terminal illness stood in front of the mirror, shaving his head in preparation for brain surgery. He had immense wealth. Even the hospital he was in belonged to him. But when he needed companionship the most, he was completely alone. The only person who stuck around was his personal assistant, who seemed more concerned with discussing how his estate would be divided after his death. Fortunately, the surgery was a success. The doctor told him they'd done all they could. From now on, it was up to him. Faced with death, Wealth suddenly felt powerless. What mattered more now was the warmth of human connection. In the hospital bed next to his was a man named Carter. Every day, Carter's wife brought him meals and medication, and his son would visit to tell him how much his grandson missed him and wanted him to get better soon. Edward felt envious, though he never admitted it, instead choosing to mask it with sarcasm directed at Carter. Carter didn't respond to any of it. He simply kept reading his book. He was a mechanic by trade, but his love for books had made him a walking encyclopedia. Not long after, Edward's condition worsened. He was constantly vomiting and growing weaker. As both men battled their pain, they began to grow closer in their shared suffering. They started taking walks together and having long conversations about their illnesses, about life. What began as mutual annoyance slowly turned into a genuine friendship. Then one day, the doctor delivered devastating news. Edward had 6 months to live, and Carter possibly less than a year. Stunned into silence, the two men looked at each other, fear written all over their faces. Carter crumpled up his half-finished bucket list and tossed it aside, feeling like dreaming of anything now was just pointless. But later, while cleaning the room, the assistant found the paper. Edward, curious, opened it and read Carter's modest wishes. To help a complete stranger from the heart. Laugh until I cry. Drive a race car, and others. Edward scoffed at how boring the list seemed, then grabbed a pen and added a few wild suggestions. Skydiving, getting a tattoo, traveling the world, even kissing the most beautiful woman in the world. At first, Carter was annoyed, but he couldn't help laughing at Edward's childish enthusiasm. Though the additions seemed ridiculous, a part of him felt excited by the idea. Edward looked him in the eye and suggested they actually do it. Complete the list together. He had the money to make it all happen. Carter hesitated, unsure. Then Edward made a point. Rather than sit at home watching their family suffer over them, why not go out and really live before it was too late? After giving it some thought, Carter finally agreed. Their first stop was skydiving. As they stood at the plane's edge, Carter panicked and shouted that he wanted to go home, but was pushed out anyway. Edward followed, intentionally delaying his parachute to scare his instructor half to death. Both landed safely, checking off their first wish. Next was getting a tattoo. Edward chose a phoenix and urged Carter to get one too, but Carter refused, saying he didn't want to mark the body his parents gave him. Then came the race car. Edward bought Carter his dream car, a Mustang GT 350. They suited up in racing gear and hit the track. Carter, who'd spent his life fixing cars, had never owned one like this. Now he finally got to feel what it was like. Their adventure continued. They saw lions and antelope in Africa, watched the sunset from the top of the pyramids, rode motorcycles across the Great Wall, and finally stood at the base of Mount Everest, hoping to complete Carter's final wish, to stand on the world's highest peak. Unfortunately, they arrived too late. Fierce winter winds made climbing impossible until the next spring, which they knew they wouldn't live to see. Their last stop was Hong Kong. A beautiful woman approached him. They hit it off, the mood between them turning flirtatious. Just as she hinted at spending the night together, Carter remembered his wife and gently turned her down. Back at the hotel, he asked Edward if the woman had been arranged. Edward admitted that she had. Carter chuckled and said it had worked. He missed his family now and wanted to go home. Before they parted, Carter asked the assistant to drive past Edward's daughter's house, hoping to help mend their relationship. But Edward became furious, refused to go in, and tore up the bucket list before storming off. Back at his mansion, the luxury surrounding him couldn't fill the emptiness inside. Even with beautiful women around, Edward broke down in tears. Meanwhile, Carter was welcomed back by his family, rediscovering the warmth of home and rekindling his love for his wife. His wife prepared a romantic surprise. Carter waited nervously, like a teenager in love. But when she came out, she found him collapsed on the floor. At the hospital, doctors told Edward that Carter's cancer had spread to his brain. Emergency surgery was needed, but the odds weren't good. Carter's wife handed Edward a letter, saying her husband had written it for him. Carter, now lying in bed with tubes everywhere and his head shaved again, motioned for Edward to come closer. He asked if Edward was still drinking that expensive coffee, then handed him a paper that explained how it was made, from beans digested and excreted by civet cats. Edward paused, then burst into laughter. Carter laughed too, and tears rolled down both their faces. Then Carter pulled out the restored bucket list and crossed off, "Laugh until I cry."
It's not finished. It's not a one-man deal. I'm afraid it'll have to be.
Carter's experience helped Edward realize just how important family really is. He took the first step and reached out to make peace with his daughter. Their relationship healed, and they became close again, just like before. Soon after, Carter passed away on the operating table. At the funeral, Edward crossed off another item: help a stranger from the heart. He realized he was that stranger, and it was Carter who had saved him, reminding him how to feel human again. Not long after, Edward also passed away. On a clear morning, his assistant climbed Everest and scattered both men's ashes together at the summit. They had finally completed their last wish: to witness the most beautiful view in the world.